The gift of eloquent writing wasn't a common attribute for women in the 1800s. However, one woman excelled beyond measure. Her ability to write moving poems, inspiring songs, and detailed minute notes inspired saints and led to the creation of various church organizations. This woman didn't just impact the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, she inspired and encouraged women to pursue education and to be involved and have a say in their families and communities, which ultimately impacted the women's suffrage movement within the United States, which advocated for women's rights to vote. However, she remains like a shadow. Not many recognize how much of an impact she had on society. Without research, I wouldn't have cared or grown to appreciate her as much as I do now. I hope that today's podcast allows me to help others become just as informed as I am about this remarkable woman, Eliza R. Snow. Welcome to the BYU-Idaho Roots of the Mighty Oaks podcast. I'm your host, Eden Rowe, and here we talk about the history of BYU-Idaho and how it applies to us today. The stories shared during this podcast are true, and they can help us understand and appreciate how BYU-Idaho became our beloved institution. The Eliza R. Snow Building is where young musicians can pursue music degrees, with classes ranging from jazz studies, opera workshops, music education courses, various choirs, and more. The Snow is a beautiful and loud building. Capturing hearts and emotions through music involves both talent and determination, a determination to get better and to increase your abilities through practice and patience. Those involved in any sorts of musical arts would agree that without practice, you can't get better. And the reward is worth the effort. Music has the powerful ability to transport its audience and promote them to feel a variety of emotions. Just as students grow and improve their talents in the Snow Building, so did the building's namesake, Eliza Roxy Snow. She was known as being a highly successful and well-known poet in the church community. She wrote multiple hymns that are still sung at church today. And she was involved in a wonderful, new and exciting organization for the early women of the church, the Relief Society. As a young woman, Eliza worked as a secretary for her father, Oliver Snow, who served as a county commissioner and as a justice of the peace. This gave Eliza an early introduction to the government and an opportunity to practice recording meetings. This job was no easy task, but it resulted in her developing a skill set needed for the start of many church organizations. It seemed like every decision Eliza ever made involved a clear and future-focused mind. She didn't take matters lightly. When her family was introduced to the church by Signe Rigdon in 1831, her mother and sister were baptized almost immediately. Eliza took more than 4 years to join them, and at the age of 31, she was baptized. She was thoughtful and refused to be pressured into a religion. Once she joined the church, though, she was invested. Eliza moved to Kirtland, Ohio, and became a respected and close friend to many. Like many of the saints, she was eager to help build the Kirtland Temple, a place of the highest form of worship, and donated to its construction. On March 27, 1836, Joseph Smith dedicated the Kirtland Temple. Eliza was present for the momentous occasion. She said,
"No mortal language can describe the heavenly manifestations of that memorable day. Angels appeared to some, while a sense of divine presence was realized by all present, and each heart was filled with joy inexpressible and full of glory."
Eliza was always so focused on the temple and found many ways to express its importance in her life. Unfortunately, because of heavy persecution, the early Latter-day Saints were forced to leave Kirtland and their beloved temple behind. Joseph Smith and the Saints were given another opportunity by the Lord to build a new temple in their newly established home in Nauvoo, Illinois. Like the Kirtland Temple, the men and women of Nauvoo also donated and assisted in any way they could to contribute to their temple. And it was through this spark of innovation that the Relief Society was born. On March 1st, 1842, two women, Margaret Cook and Sarah Granger Kimball, were sitting together discussing the temple. The temple at the time was only 3 feet high, but these women wanted to play their part in building it all the same. Margaret was an excellent seamstress, and Sarah had enough money to provide materials. Margaret suggested they team up to make shirts for the men working on the temple. Sarah loved this idea and suggested they invite other women and form a sewing society. At the Sewing Society's first meeting, it was suggested that Eliza R. Snow write a constitution and a group of laws that the women could present to the prophet, which Eliza did. Joseph Smith exclaimed that this was the best constitution he had ever read. He told Eliza to return to the other women and tell them that God was pleased, but he wanted more for the women than a sewing society. Through priesthood power and direction, the women of the church would be organized into a society where they could assist one another in growing in the gospel. He invited the women to come together, and with patience, they were able to create the Relief Society. Emma Smith was appointed as the first president, and Eliza R. Snow was elected as the secretary. Eliza took the position seriously. She recorded every meeting, including details about who spoke and the ideas that they shared. She had a book full of all the minute meetings that she carried with her when she left Nauvoo and traveled across the plains to Utah. After Brigham Young became the next prophet, he asked Eliza to help create multiple relief societies in various locations where the saints settled. She was appointed as the second general president of the Relief Society and served in this calling until her death in 1887. It was recorded that throughout the rest of her life, she shared her book with ward relief societies across what would become Utah, Idaho, and Wyoming, as an example of their presidency's responsibilities and how meetings should run. Her notes and example inspired the women of the church by helping them realize that they had a purpose in God's eyes, and she represented their insights and ideas every time she returned to share with church leaders what she learned from these local relief societies. Eliza had a way with words. She was known as Zion's poetess. This name originated back in Kirtland when Joseph asked her to assist in writing for the church's printing press. She wrote more than 500 poems in her lifetime. Common themes in her poetry were perseverance and faith. Some of her poetry was even humorous. She also wrote a variety of hymns for the church's first hymn book. Her most memorable hymn titled, "O My Father." This hymn contained beautiful lyrics about heavenly parents, including a heavenly mother. She wrote this piece shortly after two heartbreaking deaths in her life: the prophet Joseph Smith and her father Oliver. The hymn was originally a poem published in the newspaper Times and Seasons with the title of My Father in Heaven, but went through a few changes before becoming a beloved hymn for the early saints. This hymn is still a powerful reminder of God's presence. Heber J. Grant, the seventh prophet for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, recalled in a message to the church the power of music and said this about Eliza R. Snow in her hymn.
When I was a child, next to my own mother, no woman that ever lived took as much interest in me, gave me as much motherly advice, or seemed to love me more than did Sister Snow. I loved her with all my heart, and loved her hymn, O My Father.
The love that he felt from Eliza was felt by many young children. Many children recalled her showing them a pocket watch that belonged to Joseph Smith. She would let the little children touch and hold it. It helped them grasp at the idea that Joseph Smith was a real man and that they got to hold something that he physically owned. She would carry the watch to various locations so children all over could have this experience. You see, the organization of the Relief Society was just the beginning. Eliza also assisted in creating two more organizations that still run in the church today. One was for the children of the church. You might know it as Primary. The second organization was created for the young ladies of the church. It became known as Young Women's. All three of these church organizations went against the status quo of the time. Women and children didn't have a lot of say or rights in Eliza's day. Religion was looked down upon, and the ideas of organizations that promoted education and equality were also frowned upon by outsiders. Eliza was like a candle to all who saw her. She held multiple sermons on the importance of women and religion. She inspired thousands of women, teaching them that God saw them and that they could do more than they thought possible. She believed women deserved to have a say and the right to vote. Eliza encouraged the women of the church to take action in their homes, that they were more than an ornament to society, and that they didn't need to receive praise to have value.
Women should be women, not babies, that need petting and correction all the time. I know we like to be appreciated, but if we do not get all the appreciation which we think is our due, what matters? We know the Lord has laid high responsibility upon us, and there is not a wish or desire that the Lord has implanted in our hearts in righteousness, but will be realized. And the greatest good we can do to ourselves and each other is to refine and cultivate ourselves in everything that is good, and ennobling to qualify us for those responsibilities.
The women of the Relief Society were very involved within their communities. Some helped plant and store grains. Others helped open local stores and businesses, while president of the Relief Society, Eliza, helped raise funds to open Salt Lake City's Desert Hospital in 1882. And she later served as chair of its board of directors. This served as an emergency hospital, a maternity home, and a women's medical school. The Relief Society helped assist several women to go to medical school so they could become doctors, midwives, and nurses, and the women who participated would come back and teach other women in the church what they learned. The women in the early days of Relief Society were true pioneers, and their influence helped spark ideas and encourage change in the young nation that was the United States. After hearing about their example, maybe it won't come as a surprise to you that the Utah Territory was the second in the nation to extend voting rights to women citizens. Eliza R. Snow had a strong knowledge of her self-worth and divine nature. She empowered women to participate in civil activities and seek both religion and secular education. She prioritized the temple, encouraged members to deepen their connection with God, and she strengthened her talents through patience and practice. I admire her ability to step out of the box and acknowledge that she had worth. In different states of our lives, we can be self-critical. We can forget who we are and forget why we're here. Satan does his best to tempt, to afflict, and to destroy our self-worth. But by turning to the heavens, we can receive strength. We can feel peace. And we can know that we are not alone. Just as Eliza R. Snow knew that we could all become something more, we can too. Thank you for listening to the Roots of the Mighty Oaks podcast. This episode has been produced and read by BYU-Idaho communications student Eden Rowe.